Hello and welcome to the Infinity Bros podcast, the only podcast that is perfectly balanced as all things should be. My name is Isaac Edlin. I am your host tonight, and with me I have two fellow Infinity Bros. The first is my good friend Zayne Ellis. How are you doing, Zayne?
I'm doing well. Happy to be here. Just another fun AM podcast. Robbie's making noises.
But, well, now we can't edit that out. He could have just edited it out, Zayne. Gosh dang it.
I don't want him to.
We don't want Max to have an easy time editing ever. Like, we always want to make it harder on Max. So, the other fellow Infinity Bro that you guys have already heard was Robbie Sauter. How you doing, Robbie?
I hate this show. I just come on here and I thought it was going to be great, and Zayne just ruins it.
How did you feel being the second one announced and Zayne was announced ahead of you? How did that make you feel?
Zayne puts a lot of work in for the Infinity Bros. He shows up, he wakes up, at like, 10 o'clock and hops on.
Rolls out of bed, walks 2 steps to his chair to get on his computer. And
let's be honest, he's sitting on his bed right now.
I'm not. I'm sitting in my chair. Not quite.
Well, guys, we have a jam-packed show for you today. We are going to be talking 2 big shows that we've been reviewing, The Last of Us and The Mandalorian. A lot of stuff to talk about. But first, we want to make sure that if you have never listened to the Infinity Bros before, connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Twitch, YouTube, theinfinitybros.com, Discord, Hive. I think there's maybe like some other things in there, but those are like all the big main ones, especially Hive. We're totally super duper active on that. Jarrett made an account and pieced out after like a day. Good times.
Yeah, Hive is not
it's not a thing. It's not a thing.
Not it.
Anyways, we would be very excited to hear from you. You can email us at theinfinitybrospodcast@gmail.com if you have any feedback. So thank you so much for tuning in and listening. And like I said, we've got a lot of things to get to. So what do you guys want to discuss first? Last of Us or Mandalorian? Group vote.
You're the host.
Yeah, but I'm not like Max. I don't want to just control the conversation,
What?
Yeah. I'm different. I'm
built different.
Built different.
The Mandalorian was pretty good, and I feel like there's more drama to talk about with the Mandalorian.
Okay.
Based on the show, based on people's reactions to it.
Based on a TikTok that you made earlier.
Yes.
Right?
Sure.
So check out the Infinity Bros on TikTok to hear what we're talking about. Okay, let's talk about The Mandalorian. Well, guys, episode 2 of The Mandalorian. Actually, first, before we get into it, I suppose we should probably play our rating bumper. Wow, that was a maximum. Just screwing up my words here. We rate things a specific way on the Infinity Bros podcast, so check that out right here.
Here on the Infinity Bros podcast, everything is ranked from a 0 to 6 point scale. 0 meaning horrible, and 6 meaning absolutely excellent. If all of the Infinity Bros rank something a 6, it gets an infinity step.
Now that you know how we rate things, we're going to get into The Mandalorian Season 3, Episode 2. We are going to be talking all things spoilers, so make sure you have gone and watched this episode. You're going to want to watch this episode anyways because it's a banger. But, if you don't want to be spoiled, make sure you pause this podcast. We already got your download. It's all good. Go watch the episode and then come back and listen to us talk about it for a little bit. But here is your official spoiler warning.
This is...
Prepare yourself.
An Infinity Bros.
Prepare yourself.
Spoiler. Warning.
All right, guys. Mandalorian Season 3, Episode 2. A lot of good stuff in this episode. It's basically, what happens is Mando ends up going to Mandalore to check out the mines. We've been talking about, him going to Mandalore to redeem himself for a long time now. And he finally gets down there. First of all, though, I do want to, before we get down there, there's one little thing that bugs me about The Mandalorian. Now, our good friend Scott Higa has been ripping on the Mandalorian, many different things. Go listen to the Christian Nerd podcast. Yeah, that's a little bit more drama to that as well. He literally has a segment on his podcast to rip on the Mandalorian. So if you're not liking the Mandalorian, make sure you go listen to the Christian Nerd, and you can
That's
get
your guy.
your daily ripping in on the Mandalorian. But there is one thing that bugs me about the Mandalorian in general, and it's Peli Motto. Don't like her. She's just doesn't seem to fit in the Mandalorian. Like every time I come on a scene with her in it, it's just like it feels like it takes me out of the episode. She's like goofy and funny, and that's fine. Like I'm not her character in itself is not like a terrible character or anything. It just feels so out of place with the Mandalorian. It just, I don't know, man. What do you guys think about Peli Motto? Because am I the only one that thinks this way, that feels this way about her? She just doesn't do it for me.
Yeah, I don't think it takes me like completely like out of the show or anything, but I think it just fits more into like, hey, the Star Wars universe is full of quirky characters that like they're gonna just be different or have, different aspects. And, maybe that's part of just the being able to just write that off of being like, oh, this is just another, one of these quirky characters. But I think it's more of just like, it gets the weird anytime it's any of those scenes. Cause you're like, I just want action. Like I want him just like it's fine of just like a quick thing, or like last season, or was that the book about the segment they had like when they were building a ship, like that stuff makes sense. But like,
Boba Fett, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was Book of Boba Fett. Yeah. But then, yeah, you have some where it's like plot driven and it's just a quick, like, okay, that makes sense. But it's just like, I don't need much time invested in her character. Like, it's just kind of a, hey, I got this person when I need some random part or some one I'm looking for information for. Like, that's kind of the point of that character. And as long as that's what the role she hits, that's fine.
I don't have any issues with her. She doesn't have that much screen time. Isaac, why are you so offended by her?
I'm not offended by her. Like I said,
I don't person with
her.
a personality in like the Mandalorian series. Like, this lady's having a good time. I hate it.
No, that's not my issue with her. Like I said, I don't hate her as a character. It just feels like she doesn't fit in the Mandalorian. Like it just kind of takes me out of it every time we come upon her.
But there's always that person at work that like, I'm working or whatever. And then there's a person that's like way too happy. You ever have those people?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that's where she sits in. Like, she's just more happy and more like giddy than everyone else for no reason. And that's just who she is as a person.
And that's fine. Like, here's an example of this, what I'm saying. All right. So Mando Dingerin is looking for parts for IG-11, right? Yeah, so he can fix IG-11 to watch Grogu while he goes and explores Mandalore. But he gets there and she's like, "Oh, you don't need that. Here's this like astromech that it makes no sense that this astromech would be like exploring for caves of Mandalore for Dingerin." Yeah, I know, but she's also his friend. So like, man, this is it. This is it. It doesn't like make sense to me that Mando is okay with this. Like he's like, oh yeah, this astromech, which can barely even roll on a flat surface, is going to go to Mandalore and explore with me. Like that makes zero sense to me. I was just like, why are you okay with this, Mando? You should have been like, no.
Be mad at Mando's judgment then.
Well, that's
not her fault that he bought the mech.
He's got a soft spot for her because like that part just didn't make any sense to me. I thought that was odd that Din would allow that to happen.
This is not the argument that I thought we would have on the show today. I did not think this was coming.
Part of that too is kind of necessary because it's like the mech has the ability to scan the environment. Like, so it was kind of necessary. I can understand of like
IG-11 would be able to scan the environment as well. I mean, like,
but how's he going to fix IG-11? They had the astromech there. They didn't have the memory core.
it just doesn't make sense to me, man.
You needed a mech to be able to at least scan the environment to know it was safe to breathe.
You could have picked almost any droid. Like, why did you pick that one?
Maybe other droids don't have that scanning ability. Astromechs would, because it goes in the ship and you got to fly on other planets so they can tell you the atmosphere conditions. It makes sense.
No, it doesn't make sense.
Sending it to scout out in a cave probably doesn't make a ton of sense, but
like,
having it there
with like R2D2 on Dagobah, like the guy can barely make it. It's a jungle environment. Like you can't have an astromech there, but R2D2 is there by accident. Mando takes this guy here on purpose. It's just like, what? No, this doesn't make sense to me. But Pelimato is the reason that scene happened, and I don't like it. So
you just hate the hustle of Pelimato. That's all it is.
Yeah,
maybe that's it. Maybe I'm too like green, and I don't like that she's hustling him.
You didn't like that she was out there like sabotaging other people's speeders on Boons of Eve to sell their parts back. So Ellie just like,
I got a sour taste in my mouth for it.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so going back to episode 1 of season 3, we saw Bo-Katan, right? Mando goes to whatever like moon that she's on, and she's all by herself. This is another part that I thought was kind of like weird. She's all by herself. She says that her crew has gone to join other like forces and like, you know, work mercenary stuff basically, because she was so bent on like, hey, we need to take over Mandalore type of thing. To me, it was a little bit of a weird side quest. Like, and the Mandalorian is well known for being basically a fetch, like side quest, like episodic, like, hey, this episode, we're going to go fetch this to get to our next objective. Like that part of it was, you know, that part of it's fine, but they immediately are like, oh, we need to go fix IG-11. Then he goes to Bo-Katan and says he's going to Mandalore. And it's like, wait a minute. Like, why did we go to Bo-Katan now? Like, it seemed like they kind of forced that part in. And it's for episode 2 where she comes and rescues him on Mandalore. Like, he obviously needed to connect with her on, well, we already gave the spoiler warning, Robbie. He already connected with her. So then she comes to save him in episode 2. But so that part was a little like wonky. I was like, why? They kind of like forced that in there a little bit to me. But, you know, I'm willing to bypass that. Bo-Katan is a sweet character and she kicks butt in this episode. So it's like, okay.
I think to add to that, though, part of the reason why he went and talked to her, because if you picked up on that episode, like, Jyn has never been on Mandalore before. So by going to talk to her, she would know where the mines are. She would know where the city, like kind of what the purpose was. Like she would kind of know where to go. So it kind of, in a way, makes sense. He went there for information because he's never been on Mandalore before. You know?
That part makes sense to me, but it was weird that they jumped from like, oh, I got to fix IG-11. And then he went to Bo-Katan. Like he just like was like, oh, yeah, we can do that later. It's fine. But he seemed like so bent on fixing IG-11 in the first half of the episode that it just seemed like a weird jump to me. But, you know, like I said, it was a needed, not introduction, but like it was a meeting that needed to happen in order for this episode.
I will say it is weird that he was so set on having that droid go with him. It's like, there's plenty of droids in the universe, dude. Just take any droid. He was like, no, I need the one that's like cemented down that you guys are using as
the one that literally has like 2 parts left. I need to fix this guy.
That is such a weird like Mando thing. Like, it's a robot, dog. Like, just get another robot.
Yeah, but he rewired it, so it's the only one he trusted.
Well, it blew himself up, so who cares? You can rewire another
literally
one.
Tried to attack him in the first episode, so.
Well, that's because it went back to its default settings.
Yeah,
and Mando couldn't hit the
he's gonna have to rewire him again, and not to mention fix all the 16 billion parts that he's missing from it.
Oh, such a weird hill for Mando to die on. Like, no, I need this one.
And then he just gives it up so freely when he gets to Pelimato. He was like, "Okay, you're right. I'll take this astromech."
It's almost like the writers were like, yeah, we're gonna do like 5 episodes on him finding all the pieces to make him, and then they're like, you know what, that's stupid. And they're like, "Hey, just
just give it up.
take the
take
crappiest
astronaut.
droid you
Okay,
can."
well,
and just
you
go
can't
to
hate
Mandalore.
on R5. R5's an OG. He's been there since the beginning.
Yes, he's been around.
I
like,
don't care.
I mean, like, but that's the whole point of R5.
He's a trash
I mean,
can looking robot.
he was in New Hope. Like, he's an OG character. Come on.
Oh my gosh! Wow, he's in New Hope. Wow, Star Wars fan service. Oh, good for them.
That's what I thought. It was awesome.
R5 was in A New Hope.
He doesn't go on the adventures that R2 gets because he broke when Luke went to pick him. Okay.
Yeah, so maybe he deserves what he's getting now.
So R5 has always been trash. Got it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, anyways, they see Bo-Katan. Bo-Katan's like, "You guys are crazy." Whatever. And she's, by the way, she's just like chilling by herself in this fortress. Like, what is she doing?
Just
She's
sits in her chair all day.
Just moping by herself in this giant fortress. Like, at least go with your friends that are doing mercenary work or something. Like, do something. Like, it seems weird that she's just here moping
in
by
full
herself.
get up too. Like, she's not like in a robe, like chilling.
In this
like,
very strategic, like sloped sit in her chair.
in her chair thing. Yeah.
But I mean, hey, it was epic, so worth it.
It was epic, and like when you think about it, like 100%, that's something I would do too. Like, could you imagine? You're just like, "Oh, hey, we're gonna go check out in on Zayne's house," and you just see me sitting on a chair and like I'm dressed like Master Chief. Like, Zayne, why are you dressed like? Because I can. Do you do anything? No, I'm just sitting here.
I'm single and surrounded by robots. I can do what I want.
This is my castle. I'm Jordan Party. Okay, I can do whatever I want.
Oh, that's an inside joke that no one gets.
That's fine.
It's fine. It's fine, guys. Fun stuff. All right. So, anyways, they get to Mandalore. They're going to be like exploring. He sends the astromech out. Gets lost immediately. Like, they go through all this trouble to do like, they analyze the environment, blah, blah, blah. And then he's like, I guess I'll just pressurize my helmet and go anyways. Like, okay. I guess he could have just done that in the first place, But anyways, he goes out, rescues R5. There's some dudes that have been living on Mandalore, apparently, that are we find out later in the episode, these guys are native to Mandalore. They're not like raiders or whatever that have like, traveled to Mandalore after the destruction of it. Like, they were natives on Mandalore, kind of living in the caves and stuff, and then they kind of came to the surface when everything happened and everybody left. So,
well, I thought it was the opposite. Didn't they like live in the wastelands, and after everything got glassed, that's when they went to the caves? Isn't that what Bo-Katan said?
Maybe I missed it.
I mean, either way, yeah, they're native to Mandalore. Right. They're weird looking, glowy eye dudes.
Gotcha. So they come to the Civic Center, and they're kind of like, they kind of take over, and they're like scavengers basically. So they end up attacking, Mando and Grogu, and Mando fights them off, no problem. Like, they're not like, severely overpowering or anything. They keep exploring. Finally, we get to this part where this is the most interesting part of this episode to me. We get this like, basically like crab. He's like a cyborg, but he's a living organism, because you see his eye, right? But he's got like a cyborg body, and he kind of does look a bionicle, honestly.
There's a set of bionicles that it's literally just like a slug that lives in the head of the bionicle.
Did they just copy off of Bionicle?
They just stole Bionicle from Lego, yeah.
Okay, I saw this guy and immediately was like, okay, that's awesome. I love this guy. And then, spoiler alert, they kill him off. And I was like, wait a minute, I want to know more about this guy. What the heck is this thing?
Wait. We don't know that he's dead. Because remember, he crawled then to the big crab, and she just cut off the big head of the crab.
He was crawling away, and she
stabbed it.
Yeah, she
did she stab him?
She stabbed it afterwards. Yeah.
Oh shoot.
So,
sorry.
I mean, like, it would be. I guess he could survive it. Like, it was Star Wars, but that that seemed to me like he was pretty much dead. But I was like, dude, I want to know about this thing. Why do we know nothing about this thing? This thing is awesome.
I want to know how long that thing was laying under the ground in the crab robot.
Yeah, exactly. Was that there when
know.
Mandalorians were there? Was it just like creeping around?
Well, I don't think it would have been that long. Like, it had probably made a living of eating the other creatures that were there. That's why it had the trap there.
But it seemed like it was collecting Mandalorian armor. Like, it's waiting for Mandalore people to come there and then, like...
Maybe, like, Mandalorians are like the delicacy. It's just like, it's just going to eat, like, the scummy stuff. And then occasionally...
Definitely more diabolical, too, because, like, he put this, like, needle in Mandalorian. He was, like, extracting fluids from the Mandalorian. Like, is he going to keep him alive and keep doing this? Like, I was like, oh, gosh, this is
some Mad Max blood bag type stuff.
I'm sure that thing has some sort of name that we'll get in the lore of some Star Wars person will help us out with that.
Yeah.
I would hope so. That was an interesting character.
Shout us out, man, because I wanted to know more about this thing. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. It kind of reminded me of, General Grievous. Like, if Grievous survived, this could be Grievous.
That's what I thought. I thought that too.
Way later, he somehow scrapped himself together and made it to Mandalore, and now he's just like living off of the remains of whatever is on Mandalore. Like, that would be wild.
Just watch, like, some executive's going to be like bored and be like, he's going to be in an interview, and they're going to be like, yeah, that was Grievous. Yeah, she just had his brain and eye and some little legs, and now we killed him. Didn't want to make a big deal out of it, but
didn't want to make a big deal out of it. I was a little sad that we didn't hear more about him. I wanted to know what the heck is going on with this dude. That was a crazy part. That was one of my favorite parts, honestly, because that thing was sweet. But anyways, yeah. So he captures the Mandalorian. Grogu sees this happen, follows him down. Grogu taking great initiative here, man. Zayne, wouldn't it be great if you had like this capsule that just floated you around everywhere?
It'd be the coolest. Best, right? Oh my goodness.
How does that thing work?
I don't know.
At first, awesome. I thought Grogu would like use the Force to just fly it around, but like, I don't think it's like a floating wheelchair is what it is.
Well, because I thought it was something like even like
a baby cradle thing.
Well, right, but then it's like tied to like a beacon that Mandalorian has on his belt, so like it always stays within. So like it's whatever, but then it always follows Mandalorian.
But it seems like Grogu has some kind of control over it in this episode.
It's like a high-functioning stroller is what it is.
It's a fancy what is that? What is that? A pram, I think they're called. Just a fancy pram.
I don't know what you're talking. We have kids and we have no idea what you're talking about.
Google it. It's them old school like baby carriages that you'd push, like you'd see in like 1800 Victorian.
They're just called strollers now.
No, they're called prams.
Okay, history major. Actually, they're called prams. So Grogu goes, watches all this happen, and Mando tells him to go find Bo-Katan, which thankfully Mando showed him a little map in his starship of like where to go. So he points that, R5 gets him out of there, gets him to Bo-Katan. Bo-Katan's like, yeah, all right, I guess we should go save him. She comes down, kicks butt. Despite the weird-ish introduction to Bo-Katan in episode 1, she kicks butt in this episode, and I love her character. Katie Sackhoff does an incredible job, which, for those of you guys who don't know, Katie Sackhoff played Bo-Katan in the animated series, like Star Wars Rebels. Right? Yeah. Is she voiced, right? Is she in Clone Wars at all? Zayne, I think she might be in like one episode.
No, Bo-Katan's in Clone Wars a lot.
Is she? Am I thinking of Clone Wars more than Rebels then? She's in Rebels too, though. Yeah, she's in Rebels because
she's in both, but
the Darksaber stuff with Sabine.
Right, but yeah, you get a ton more of the Mandalore story in Clone Wars.
They do that Mandalore arc, and it focuses more on her sister, who is the Queen of Mandalore at that time.
Yeah, because that's Obi-Wan's main squeeze, Satine.
Satine, yeah, okay. Satine, yeah. So Bo-Katan, I mean, she kick butt in this episode. I love seeing all the different Mandalorian armor too. Like in episode 1, when we get that opening scene with the armorer like inducting that kid or whatever, and you see all the different types of Mandalorian armor. That was so cool. I thought that was a really, really awesome moment. Also, we get to see a little snippet of Grogu's force powers as he's coming out of the cave. He gets confronted by what are these things called? Alamates, the native Mandalorian.
Oh yeah,
dudes.
like Alamites or Alamates.
Alamite. So he gets
Something
confronted, and we see him just totally chuck a dude out of the way, like no problem. Like Grogu is he's got some training under his belt now. Like he's getting legit. Do we see Grogu in Mandalorian armor by the end of this season?
I don't think so.
I could see like
It'd be awesome.
some little, like shoulder pads maybe, but like you can't put a helmet on him because that just
you just make little slits in the sides of the helmet so his ears like
But
stick
we've
out.
seen so many like edits of that, and it's like that'd be kind of cool. I don't think so though.
I saw a wild fan theory TikTok the other day that was like they thought that Grogu was going to be leader of Mandalore by the end of this season, and I was like,
What?
"Oh my
He's gonna
gosh!"
be like 3 years old in terms of size by that time.
Like he still is babbling and can't speak words.
But he is starting to say things though. That was the best part of
his
the
babbling. Adorable.
episode.
I
I thought
think
when you
no.
were talking about his force powers that you were going to talk about him like force powering his chair into circles
That was
in
incredible.
episode 1 because I was like, oh we got to see his force powers when he's just
stealing snacks.
Like
Great
how
use of
many
the
of
Force.
us, if we had force powers, would use it for stuff like all of us?
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Oh
Yeah,
my!
like-
It'd be like the remotes on the other side of the room. Yeah.
Yeah, I always think of the scene in I think it's episode 2 where Padme and Anakin are in Naboo and they're like hiding out or whatever, and he's like just floating pears across the table to Padme and stuff. I always thought of that. I'm like, oh yeah, I'd totally do that. I'd totally
Ask and use your words.
put
dog.
stuff
Like,
to me all the time. Oh, it'd be awesome. If only we were force users, guys.
you know,
The things we could do.
Be great.
or
But anyways.
doing.
Avoid doing exactly. Grogu is adorable, and yeah, his babbling is just oh my gosh. Every time I see him, and I think I'm gonna get over him. Like before the season, I was like, Grogu's cute, you know. Like I think everybody's over the cuteness, but like we get into these 2 episodes, and it's like, no. Every time he's on scene, I'm like, duh, I absolutely love Grogu. I would die for Grogu.
Oh, all right.
Kid is adorable. So anyways, Bo-Katan comes and she goes down to rescue and pretty much dispatches this creepy cyborg crab thing like easily, which I know like he took Mando by surprise, so like that's one thing. But like I was like, man, she really didn't take her long to take this thing out. I mean, she did have the Darksaber for like when he went in the big tank thing. So that was, that was understandable. But we do get that moment where she grabs the Darksaber and she wields it again. So that's kind of cool.
Awesome.
I think they explained this in the show, but I just need a better clarification on it. Why is she able to use the Darksaber so well and Mando can't? I need that explained to me again, like I'm an idiot, because I don't get it. Zane, go.
Well, so this means you need to rewatch Book of Boba Fett because it's odd that that's where the explanation comes from, but then also from the animated series. But so the Darksaber, I don't remember if it's because of the metal it's made out of, but basically you have to be clear focused to use the lightsaber. So it's heavy when Jin uses it because he's not like fully clear on who he is and what his purpose is, whereas Bo-Katan is. So it's basically like the wielder of the Darksaber, when you're clear and focused and you don't have inner turmoil, that's when the saber isn't heavy. So it like reflects kind of your own inward emotional mental state.
So it's a lightweight Mjolnir.
Yeah, more or less.
Is basically what you're saying.
Yeah.
That's an interesting comparison, actually.
It's interesting though.
Yeah.
And
that
so,
is
yeah, so that's why when he
Yeah,
uses it,
Robbie.
like, he can use it, but it's so heavy, and he just does, large
Yeah,
shots. Whereas when
because
Bo-Katan uses it, it's just because
it's
she
right.
has is focused on what she's doing. Yeah.
Mhm.
It's kind of interesting to watch how he uses, because it reminds me of like the Monster Hunter video games when you have like a dual wielded
Right.
sword or whatever, and you can only do like 2 movements, and then you're just
Yep.
wide open for hits.
Right.
Because it's also just so like chopped for him because like even when you remember like when he want like he doesn't want the dark saber,
Mhm.
so that's
Right.
like adding to all that. So like that's why
Right.
he's
And
not a refined user of it.
it's definitely explained like pretty clear in that, but also if you go back to Rebels, I mean, Sabine goes through basically the same thing. Like she has it initially and it's really super heavy for her, and she basically has to go through, like training to
Yeah.
realize how to wield it. So
Yeah.
pretty similar. But yeah, it's pretty sweet to watch Bo-Katan just grab it and immediately go
Oh,
to
yeah.
town.
Yeah,
That
on
was cool.
that'll work.
Bad.
So that was pretty cool. And that makes me think like since she has it and she's wielding it, like maybe she has claim to it now that she's grabbed it and she has it. I don't know how this is going to play out, but she obviously wants it to so she can, kind of claim the leader of Mandalore, get everything moving, all that stuff. But at the same time, Mando technically owns it or whatever right now. So
right, because the only way you can pass ownership of the Darksaber is you have to defeat the wielder by combat.
right,
And so
exactly.
technically she hasn't beaten it back from Jin yet.
Yeah, exactly. And,
but,
and that's
but the little crab dude did beat
True, but
him.
he
And
but
then
he
she
never
beat him.
Yes,
So
but because I saw people talking about this as well. The thing is, the crab person dude never took possession of the
Grievous.
Darksaber. Yeah, General Grievous 2.0.
oh, General Grievous would be all over that Darksaber, man.
Right,
He would
but
be
like that was the
That's
point. The
true.
thing never actually took possession of the Darksaber. So technically, she beat him with the Darksaber, but he wasn't the wielder of
if
it.
that thing were General Grievous, we would have panned to a wall of just lightsabers.
that would have been sick.
I was just waiting for that in that fight, like before it even went back into the big crab tank thing. All of a sudden, it just like pulls out lightsabers, and we're like, "Oh my god!"
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Zane and I would have just been
That would have been
fangirling in
wonderful.
that moment so badly. Oh man, that'd have been amazing.
But no, I liked in this episode that Mando wasn't the hero. Like, because Pedro Pascal has just been the hero all this time. Actually, this is kind of interesting. This week, Pedro Pascal took a backseat in both of his shows
Yeah.
to women being the heroes. Which maybe that was planned because it was International Women's Day on, what was it, Wednesday? Maybe that was planned. If it was, holy crap, well done. But like that was kind of interesting. Like both shows that we're talking about this week, Pedro Pascal took a backseat to being the savior to helping these people out. Like he was the damsel in distress. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, it is. It's very interesting. So speaking of Mando in distress, Bo-Katan rescues him using the Darksaber. We get a little bit of background of Bo-Katan, which I think was kind of cool. So she goes into she rescues Mando. They're at the fire recovering or whatever. They're at the rest stop, and she kind of goes into a little bit of her background, like how Mando is like, man, how come you don't follow the creed? Like, why is the creed not important to you? And she's like, honestly, I was part of the like royal family, and it was all show. Like it was basically something to just like have people rely on, but it was not like law. It wasn't like, what we were following 100%. So that was kind of an interesting thing because that part has always been kind of like, I don't know, iffy to me, because we get this cult that Mando apparently is a part of, the way or whatever, the children of, what do they call them again?
Children of the Watch.
Children of the Watch. And, we see Mandalorians in other media, and most of them take their helmets off like no problem or whatever. So it really is interesting how we're seeing these two, people groups of the same race interact. So it's kind of cool that we're getting a little bit more background on that part of it.
Well, it's always an interesting, that whole Mandalorian culture, and like that's something that's huge too. Just from watching Clone Wars and Rebels to get more of that backstory, because it's just like, so like Bo-Katan, like she actually is a Mandalorian, like she's from Mandalore, whereas Jin, he's not. He's taken the creed, but like they found him on like another planet. Like he's not actually from there. It's the same with like Jango Fett. Jango Fett wasn't an actual Mandalorian. He wore the armor and did the creed, but like he's not actually born on Mandalore. So that kind of becomes where like part of there's a dichotomy there, because like he's like Bo-Katan, she is actual Mandalorian, and that's I think where part of this story could go, of just like this is the original and I lost sight of, like it's all a show. Whereas here's this guy, he's not even actually Mandalorian, but he truly believes it. And I think that there's probably some lesson that, you can learn a little bit from each other there. Because like he even says in the show, he grew up on the moon. He'd never even been to Mandalore, but yet they adhere to this strict, hey, you can't remove your helmet, you can't, which makes more sense of none of those people are actually from Mandalore. And so they all group under the identity that they've found in their armor. Whereas then to a native Mandalorian, it's kind of like, oh, well, that's kind of weird. But it's just a, culture clash, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I just find it interesting that we're seeing that clash, and we're probably going to see more of it as more of these Mandalorian groups come back to Mandalore potentially in the coming season. And I assume that we're getting some kind of Mandalore redemption, arc in this season. So it will be very interesting to see how that all plays out. Last scene, Mando goes to bathe in the mines of Mandalore and gets sucked down into the depths of the mines of Mandalore. And wow, this part was honestly what made this episode
Okay, but first,
crazy to me.
did he fall or get pulled?
That was exactly my thought too. I was like,
So,
he's wearing all that armor, it just takes the wrong step and just whoop.
And he makes a point to remove his jetpacks, to remove like some of the stuff on his back before he goes in there. So yeah, maybe he just sinks and it's just a drop off. Who knows? Because what we find in the depths does not seem to be super interested in them at the moment.
But he fell so far.
He fell very far.
Like it doesn't make any sense that he fell. Like I can't accept that argument that he just fell that far. She was having her jetpack like shooting her down the water, like and angling around stuff. Like there's no way he fell.
The water with the jetpack and went all the way down there. That was so cool. I was like, oh,
that was cool. It's like awesome. He 100% got pulled by that thing. I think it has a name. I saw it earlier.
Or something else. So, anyways, yeah. And before we get into the mines of Mandalore, when they're at the rest stop, they talk about Bo-Katan kind of goes into a little bit about the. Sorry, that just threw me off track. That was good. That was good.
The drums of the deep.
But they kind of go into a little bit of Mandalorian culture. She reads off this Mandalorian like plaque shard, whatever, and talks about the mythosaur, which is, she says in this episode, is the skull of Mandalorian, like this logo. That's what the Mandalorian logo is based off of, is the mythosaur skull. And I mean, the name, the mythosaur, is kind of just like right on the nose. Like she obviously believes that this thing existed at some point, but doesn't think it probably exists at this point, the way that she's talking about it. Mm-hmm. When they're coming back up from the depths of, the mines of Mandalore, the pools of whatever they call them, the pools of Mandalore or whatever, we see a glimpse of this, and we like the light shines right in the eye. And they make a really cool moment where Bo-Katan obviously is just shocked that this happened, and she like gasps and some like air comes out of the bottom of her helmet. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, oh, that was so cool. And, obviously shoots to the surface and rescues. But the mythosaur does not seem super interested in them. Like, it kind of just turns off to the side, and maybe the beginning of next episode is the mythosaur coming out of the depths and attacking them. I don't know. Who knows? But for that moment, it seemed that it was not really interested in them. Zane, as a Star Wars nerd, what were your reaction to this moment?
Yeah, no, that was really cool to see, and like I said, kind of the clash of cultures on stuff. Because yeah, you could tell that it's just like, oh, this is just the story. This is everything that she did being the royal family, and it's told all the tales. You did the motions. Like growing up on Mandalore, everyone knows the tale of Mandalore the First and how he defeated the mythosaur. All this stuff, and then as you're coming up, and then to see that and be like, oh, well, that's not actually a myth. Like, this was a real thing. Like, I think that's what to us, you're like, oh, but I think in that moment it was it's a huge realization thing for Bo-Katan. And yeah, it, like I said, it didn't really seem interested. I think the power of that scene was more of just the reveal that, hey, this isn't just a myth. Like, this thing still lives down in these mines, like where they originally said they were from. Like, so it'd be sweet because me, as much as I love monsters, like to have that thing come out, and it doesn't even have to attack them. I just want to see the thing because, like, in lore, like adult mythosaurs are like the size of like cities. Like,
this just sounds like Smog. Like, it just sounds like this thing took over once they moved out and is now down there just living its best life.
Well, no,
is that what's happening here?
No, they built the citadel over the mine because that's where it was first defeated. And then they built over it, but it's like you didn't have.
And now this one
beyond
took it back.
that.
But this one took it back, right?
Well, I don't know if it took it back or if that's just where it lived.
We don't know if this is the
that's
original
where they
one
come from, right?
But it's another one, so it's the mythosaur.
Right. Is this just a
mountain.
baby? I mean, it could be. I mean,
mythosaur.
It lives in water. Smog lived in gold. So
yeah, it's the same thing.
A little different,
but it went back to where they were, right?
Either way, it needs to be voiced by Benedict Cumberbatch. We're all
exactly. Right. That's what I'm trying to get to. Benedict Cumberbatch, and the thing better talk.
He's in Star Wars.
Oh my gosh, that would be.
What if that's just the bit? They're like, oh yeah, we actually did mocap for the mythosaur. It's Benedict Cumberbatch.
Okay, I just recently saw video of Benedict Cumberbatch actually doing mocap for Smog, and that was the first time I realized that he did that, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, dude is like down on the ground slithering around like a snake doing mocap for this dragon. That was bonkers. But yeah, I mean, it makes sense that he would do mocap for the mythosaur as well. So there you go. Look for Benedict Cumberbatch to be in the credits of episode 3 of The Mandalorian. Well, guys, moment of truth. Robbie, what did you think of this episode? What was your rating?
I gave this episode a 5.5 out of 6. I thought it was really entertaining. I enjoyed it from start to finish. It was really cool to see Bo-Katan just kick butt. It was cool to see Grogu get in the ship by himself and fly away and kind of take control. And I could use more of General Grievous' little monster head.
Absolutely. Zane, what was your rating?
I've given this a 6 out of 6. Like, I loved it. Like, you could watch, Bo-Katan just destroying stuff with a Darksaber just for hours. Like, it had all the plot elements. You had a little bit of humor. You had some of these revelations. You got Grogu finally, like, you kind of have that sense of like, hey, you're not just this tag along character with, Mando. And yeah, I really liked this episode. It was super fun.
Yeah, agreed. I give this episode a 5 out of 6 for the reasons that I mentioned before. Still solid, really good episode. But again, like, there's so many good episodes of The Mandalorian.
Yeah.
So to compare this to, the really, really good episodes, it just, it's not there, but it's not bad either. So the last thing I want to talk about is actually what Robbie mentioned before. IGN gave this episode a 5 out of 10.
Yeah.
And one of the things they mention is that it's because the episode is so dark and the action is hard to see.
Well, get a better TV.
You're IGN. Like, just turn the lights off in your viewing area.
Right.
Why is this a problem, and why are you rating it low because of that? That was weird to me. I was like,
I want to speak on this because I literally just bought a new TV and it's glorious. And I was like, I had zero issues seeing any of this. So I have no idea what they're talking about. Like,
I mean, sure, it's a dark episode. They're in caves and
it's
stuff
dark,
like that.
yeah,
But,
but it's not that dark.
right. Adjust some settings and turn your lights off and
Exactly. Like,
watch the episode. I don't understand why that's like decreasing your rating.
do you think IGN has like 5 people review these things and then they just go with whichever one they think like might be the most thing?
Seems competent.
They go with the one that's the most controversial to get them the most views.
Maybe
probably.
not most controversial all the time, but I feel like they do go with like, which one is the most interesting? What do you think people will be most interested in? And they're going to go with that one. But this one had a terrible reason. It was too dark. Well, you probably watched it outside, you idiot. Like, I watched it on my flip phone outside in the daylight, and it was just too dark. I couldn't see it.
Watched it on my projector screen on side of my house during the day.
Right, like, it wasn't that dark. There have been much darker shows that have been more difficult to watch than this. This, I felt, was fine. I don't know. So silly.
Just a weird criticism. IGN, what are you thinking? All right, guys. Well, as Pedro Pascal was rescued by Bo-Katan in episode 2 of The Mandalorian season 3, Joel was also rescued. Well, I shouldn't say rescued. The main focus of this episode of The Last of Us, season 8. My gosh. My
season 8. Oh my goodness.
I've missed a lot.
I've missed so much.
There's only 2 video games, but they're around season 8.
Still around. It's season 8. This is wild.
Joel's 105.
This is Isaac from the future coming back. Season 8, guys.
Season 8. Here it is, guys.
It's really falling off now.
8 of The Last of Us, where Ellie is the main focus. We're going to get into spoilers for episode 8 right off the bat. So, like, we already had a spoiler warning for my gosh, why can I not speak right now? Season 3, episode 2 of The Mandalorian. Spoilers for episode 8 of The Last of Us. Let's get right into it. What do you guys think of this episode? Focusing on Ellie and Joel really is only in like 5 minutes of the episode, maybe.
Yeah.
It's really not in a whole lot. What do you guys think of this episode?
It was so awesome to see the storytelling that they are able to do in like these like 50-minute episodes. Because this episode really, and a lot of these episodes have been just standalone episodes. They connect because they progress the story, but it's not like this whole story leads to this episode and they're both like super connected. Like there's one main storyline, right? And then there's like all these little side quests. And this is like a side quest that's like really, really well done. And it's just like, they do such a good job with the writing on this. It's like, you can jump into these and just watch one episode and like be satisfied, I feel like, without even knowing the context of other episodes. But with this one, they did such a good job building like the tension with the villain in this episode, where you're like, at first you're like, he's okay. And then he kind of gets a little worse. And then he gets a little worse. And then he gets really bad. And like, then we like get the whole finale with him. But it's like, they did such a good job building, because it's so easy for a lot of shows to go, this is the bad guy. He's bad because of these reasons, and you shouldn't like him. But like, they were like, no, he's nice. Oh, he has a little bit of a dark side. Oh, has a real big dark side.
He's straight up evil.
Yeah, this is the epitome of evil. Like, yeah. And that's what I appreciated about this episode. They did such a good job building all the way up to the end. And then I haven't played the game up to this point. So like, me and everyone else who hasn't played the game is thinking like, all right, now Pedro Pascal comes in as Joel and he takes out this guy and saves her. You know, that's what we're all thinking, because that's the normal like trope. The hero saves the day and Joel's the hero, and that doesn't happen. And Ellie takes over and just messes this dude up. And you're like, holy crap, that was awesome. This episode was great. And it like, obviously it progresses the story, but it's its own standalone episode, and it was like, holy crap!
Right.
Like, and obviously it builds. I know a little bit of the future of The Last of Us, so obviously it builds for moving forward with Ellie, that she can do things on her own. But my goodness, this was such a good episode.
Yeah. And you made an interesting point that we're going to bring up a little bit later here. That is a little bit of a difference from the video game. But first, I want to hear Zane, your thoughts on this episode.
Yeah, no, this episode, like, if you listen to the last or episode 7 review, I said in there that like this was going to be a huge episode. It was going to depend on how they did it, how Bella Ramsey did it. Like this was going to be a huge turning point, and turning point's not the right word, but like this was the next stage of like this is going to be an epic episode. And yeah, I thought they crushed it. It was the fantastic storytelling. Like I said, it's different from the game. I think the game again does some stuff better, but you're going 2 different mediums here. But as far as telling the story of this arc from the game, like this was well done. It hits the notes it needed to hit. I would have preferred maybe some other differences that they could have done more, but I understand why they did what they did. And yeah, just the setup that she got from David as the villain and everything that happened, like this was a very good episode.
Yeah, I mean, you guys already hit on it. Like, this is another show that I keep being impressed by each episode that comes out, because I think, wow, that was a fantastic episode. How can they get better than that? And it just keeps building. Like this is probably one of my favorite episodes this season. And they did an incredible job of what you said, Robbie, introducing David, the kind of antagonist in this episode, as kind of a nice guy. He's just looking out for his people. And then you start learning more and more details about him, and you're like, holy crap. Like this dude is, like I said, straight up evil. Like this is probably the worst guy we've seen in this series so far, out of all the Raiders and all of the, governments and all the stuff that we've seen. This dude is the worst. He's pretty bad. But yeah, I mean, Bella Ramsey just continues to absolutely destroy this role as Ellie, and she gets her own episode. This is her episode, and that's a little bit different from our previous episodes, where I feel like they've been mostly focusing on Joel. It's pretty equal. Like they've been focusing on Joel and Ellie pretty equally up until this point. This is an Ellie episode, and really, I think is going to propel the future of this show. So Zane, I know you obviously have played the game, and you probably remember this game a lot more than I do, just from listening to your episodes that I've listened to our podcast. I started replaying this game again, because there was, when it got to like episode 4 in this series, I was like starting to not remember stuff. I was like, dang, is that different from the game? Is that the same as the game? I don't really remember anymore. But there were definitely some differences from this episode to the game. And I think the main one that really is worth discussing is that Joel doesn't say, and he doesn't really save Ellie in the video game either, but like Ellie goes through all this by herself, and there's that really pivotal scene in the burning restaurant. Like I remember that's like burned into my brain from the game, where she's confronting David, and she eventually ends up killing him. But in the video game, Joel gets there and he goes into the restaurant, and she's like killing him as Joel finds her, and he pulls her off of him and basically brings her outside, and like they go through all that. But like in this one, Ellie kills him, and she's out of there by herself. And we get that embrace of Joel and Ellie after all that happened. Joel doesn't even, in the series, Joel doesn't even know what's going on. Like he just sees blood on her face. He knows that she has been through something, and he like just pulls her in. He's like, the baby girl line. Oh my gosh.
Oh, yeah.
I know.
lost that dude when he was like, "It's okay, baby girl.
I got you, baby girl. Oh,
Gosh.
my dad heart.
Oh, I know the dad heart, man. Like, I lost it there. But man, you just see how like we finally get a little bit of a payoff of their relationship because, and I think you even mentioned in one of the previous like review episodes that we've done, it just like we get this back and forth between Joel and Ellie, and sometimes it seems like it's just too much. Like they're not like meshing, they're not growing together as characters. This is where we see that growth finally pay off, is like Joel actually cares about her, and he's like heartbroken that she just went through this trauma in that like very, very small moment, honestly, where he embraces her, and it's just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That was fantastic moment. But I don't know, Zane, is that burning restaurant scene not like burned into your mind the same way it was for me?
Oh, absolutely, because that was such a just that the powerful moment of everything that Ellie goes through, and like, yeah, that's like not that you want to get too much in symbolism or if that's what that means, but it's just like the whole everything's burning, like it almost represents like the emotional turmoil inside of her that she's going through. It's just like you have all this just fire around you, everything's burning, like she's got everything she's trying to watch for Joel because she doesn't know if Joel's going to recover. Like he comes in later, like she doesn't know that this dude just like trying to kill her. So like that reaches that point in that series that you're just like emotions, everything's at that peak, and then she just kills the guy, just absolutely just explodes on him, and just ends it right there. And so like that's that moment in the game where, because setting up, I guess, a little bit before this, even this is the first time in the game you actually start playing as Ellie. Right. And so then you have this comment, and then so yeah, this is like that huge moment of like Ellie's very much still capable, just like Joel is capable on his own. This is that first time you're like, Ellie's got that survivor in her too.
Mm-hmm. Right. And this is really a pivotal moment in this series too. Ellie is the main character in this show. And we kind of have been, I mean, everybody's been drooling over Pedro Pascal over the past,
as they should.
As they should. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm right there with everybody drooling over him. He was just on the Hot Ones YouTube channel yesterday. I think that episode dropped.
Yeah, yesterday dropped.
Watch that immediately. Dude is a legend. I absolutely love Pedro Pascal. But this episode just, I mean, it showed us that like he is fantastic, and he is probably, I don't even know if you can call him a supporting actor. Like he is a main character in this series, but this episode showed us that Ellie is really the main character of this show. And I want to rewind a little bit because we need to talk more about David. Like this dude is, oh man, he might be one of the creepiest antagonists that we've seen in a series for a while. Like this dude just, we learn more and more about him through the episode. And when we find out, like when Ellie sees that ear on the ground in that moment where she's in the cage, and we all collectively realize, well, obviously people that have played the game probably already know what's going on, but people that are watching the series are like, oh my gosh, this is dark. Yeah. They're literally eating their own people to stay alive, one, but also like there's got to be something that snaps in you to go to that point, right? Like there's something going on here besides just starving and, a zombie apocalypse going on. There's like, actually that he kind of sums it up when he's talking to Ellie. He's like, I got a violent heart, and I know you have one too. That was kind of a interesting moment. And Ellie shows her violent heart a little bit later in the episode, and as she should, because that dude was creepy and deserved to die that way. So
absolutely.
Oh my gosh, when he steps into the restaurant with the meat cleaver and he's like, Ellie, I was like, oh no, oh no, here we go. Dude is just the creepiest creep. And man, yeah, just wild. But the actor that plays David just did a phenomenal job of of being, a really creepy dude that, like you said, I mean, you really nailed it, Robbie. He starts out as this nice guy, and you kind of get some weird vibes from him initially anyways. You're like, there's something weird about this guy. But he's working to, like, make a life for his people. He's working to try to get everybody on the same page. And we kind of see finally that bad side of him when he goes and smacks that girl when she, like, mouths off to him or whatever. And then you're like, oh
Yeah.
gosh.
But
Okay. Well,
even then, that's like okay, this guy's just like an old school Bible
Right.
thumper guy.
Yeah.
Even then I was like,
Yeah.
okay, maybe he's not he's not totally good, but
mhm,
like maybe he's not also totally bad.
right.
And then it keeps progressively getting worse.
Yeah. Just, man, they did a phenomenal job of, like, storytelling, like you said, Robbie, in this episode. And that's what they've done an incredible job of in this series. I mean, despite, only really seeing infected in maybe half of the episodes in this series, which, I mean, infected are not the main characters, and it really is interesting that we're I'm like not even sad about not seeing more infected.
No.
How do you guys feel about that? Like, are in this zombie apocalyptic world, are you guys upset that we're not seeing more infected? Like, there's a pretty decent balance of, like, human and infected foes in the video game, but it definitely seems like we're seeing the more human side of things in this series.
It's that common threat that's always kind of still there, and you're always kind of still thinking about it. I think they've done a good job of, like, it's a human-based story and narrative that they're pushing, but the common thread is still that there is an infected, and they've done a good job of, like, making sure that is still there. Like, it always seems like it's a possibility to come out at any moment, kind of like we got in the episode before this, where, like, you just randomly see the one clicker or the one infected in the extra room, and then it becomes an issue. Like, they've done a good job of, like, hiding it in the shadows, but, like, making sure, like, you're still aware of this. Like, yes, there is all this human turmoil that they're trying to figure out, but there is still this infected problem that they have to, like, handle and deal with, and they are living in this world with these infected. So I think in that regards, like, I don't care if you keep telling a really good story like they've been doing. Like, there doesn't even need to show me that much infected. Like,
Yeah.
I think they've done such a good job story-wise that the amount of infected doesn't matter until it has to matter, which I assume we're going to get more big infected episodes coming soon. But right now they do such a good job just with story-driven narrative that whatever. Like, the infected are there. I know they're there. Tell me about the story.
Yeah. Zane, you're a big zombie guy. Are you sad that we're not getting more infected in the show?
Zombie.
Yeah, I am, and that's the one detractor I do have on this show. The way that the storytelling's done is still fantastic, but the difference, especially with the game, is they use the infected to drive so much more pieces of the story. So, like, just for example, in this most recent episode, which adds to the menace or how menacing David is. So in the game, after they have the confrontation, she finds, David and James, and then he sends James back to get the medicine, and then they hold up in that little, like, the building there. Well, in the game, you're coming off of a snowstorm, and so while they're there, they get attacked by the infected. Mm-hmm. And so you have this whole scene where you're fighting off the infected, and, like, you have this moment because, like, David's legit, like, fighting with you. And so you kind of have build like this little bit of a camaraderie because you're helping each other. You have this whole scene where you're like, oh, okay, this dude, we're trying to survive together. We have this commonality. And then all that happens, they kill the infected. And then it has that campfire scene. And so after you just did all this fighting, well, then that's when David reveals so we're looking for, someone killed our guy and he's traveling with a girl. And so then you're like, wait a second. So that's when in the game, you realize he knows who Ellie is. And so then you have this menacing feeling more that starts creeping in because you're like, well, he knows who she is. Well, then why did he just help her fight off all these infected? And so that's when it kind of starts more of this. He's way more menacing and he has way more to him than's revealed. Like that's when it starts. And I feel like you miss some of that from the game. And then to flip to the end of this episode, it's also the missing thing because Joel in the game, Joel runs into the building, grabs her, they have that moment. But then the whole second part of that is them escaping that town because, hey, guess what? You just killed these people leader. All those people are then trying to kill you. Whereas in the game, you just killed David and then you just walk off to a lake. Well, what happened to everyone that was there? Because remember earlier in episode 2, everyone wanted to kill Ellie. And then all of a sudden you have this lodge on fire and all this stuff going on. And then you don't see a single other person from that town. So it's like
maybe they attack them at the beginning of this next episode. But
well, right. That could be it too. Is could just something we don't see. But I feel like the game, and again, like it's been the tenet always said, like there's some stuff that doesn't always pull over. There's some mediums that you can't tell. So like they're hitting all the story notes. I just feel like that at this point, I wish they would have given us more fights that driven some of this story. Because like the other big one that they skipped was going back to like episode 3. Like there was a huge fight part in there with all that. Yeah, ultimately like that episode gave them the car. They got the like you skipped a ton of fighting and stuff. Same with the episode 7 within the mall. Like it wasn't just one clicker; it was a bunch of them, and like you could tell that part of the story with just one. So like I understand why they did it. Still had that impact. But like there's a lot of instances from the game where there's only 1 or 2 clickers you see in the show. Like that's a mob in the game. Like there's so much more action, but I understand focusing on one of the story and they're doing that part right. I just wish that they also included more of the action, but you could get into like, oh, maybe it's budget constraints. Maybe there's this, like, I don't know the reason why they're not doing more of it, but the story, well done.
That in season 2, there's going to be so many more infected because after the success that this show has had, they're going to like,
they're going to ramp it up.
We can afford as many as we want. Like, it's going to have so much more, I bet.
Right. But I think part of that, and I haven't played the second game. I finally got it when it was on that last PlayStation sale. So, like, I will be playing it. But, like, from what stuff I've heard and talked to other people and seen, like, the problem with that, though, is the second game is far more human-driven than, like, clicker-driven or, like, infected-driven because of just the story elements. Now, granted, I haven't played the game, so I don't know how much of it the infected take place. But from what I've heard, it just seems it's far more human-driven. And like the first one, they did a good balance. Like in the game, there's a good balance of human conflict and infected conflict. And so in the show, they're nailing the human conflict, but they've really toned down the infected conflict. And I wish that was up, a little higher.
Yeah, I think I'm going to step in between. We'll probably find a little bit of common ground here, but I don't know if this is a reason why that they decided to do it that way, but it does kind of make sense. And I haven't watched The Walking Dead, but a lot of people are saying that the reason The Walking Dead kind of trails off after the first, 4 or 5 seasons or something is because the zombies in The Walking Dead they're not threats anymore after that point because you see them so much and it just becomes like routine like that. All right, well, there's some more zombies and we got to figure out what's
but those zombies are slow and boring.
Yes, like true. But what I'm saying is that the more you see of a common antagonist like that, the less of a threat they really become. So we've only seen them at a few moments in this show, but in those few moments, I mean, they're freaky and they're the main threat and they're like, it's a big deal during that moment. So again, I don't know if that's the reason why they're doing it that way, but I think it's effective in keeping those moments very, emotionally charged and really important. So yeah, that's one thing that I thought of.
Well, it's just interesting, like, because just infected and clickers are not the only evil that's out there. And this show, like, or this episode in particular, like, show that is a real thing. Like, people are just as evil as the infected are. So obviously, like, they pushed that, and they did a really good job pushing that this episode. And there wasn't even a single infected in this episode, right?
Yeah, I don't think there was.
I don't think there was a single one.
I don't think there was.
No. So like,
Because that was the point. Like the beginning part of this arc in the game has your huge infected fight, whereas
The real
wasn't in this at
monsters
all.
are the people.
Yeah.
right.
Sometimes, yeah.
Thanos was right.
the moment they walk, oh my gosh, the moment they walk into that shed, or is it Joel? Joel, I think, walks into the shed. And he like kind of pushes aside whatever the first stuff, and there's like 3 people hanging there, like skinned and stuff. I was like,
oh
boy, yikes. Big
we didn't even
yikes
talk
there.
about how Joel tortured people in this episode.
Like, yeah, skipped over that part.
I sent a message to Max, who usually is our main host, I guess you could say, for the Infinity Bros. And I was like, Max, like, what was it? Episode 2 was like, they keep saying Joel's a badass. Let me
Max
see
has been
Joel
eating
being
crow the moment he said that.
Joel's
I was
in the badass, my guy.
In that episode 2, I was like, Max, you just wait, dude.
Right.
You just wait.
My guy just like tore a guy's kneecap off and then made him point to a part of the map and then killed him.
And then kills him.
Like, goodness gracious.
In front of the other guy. And it's like, oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
That was wild. Just a couple quick hitters before we close out here. Troy Baker, who plays the voice of Joel, actually plays James, who is David's like right-hand man in this. So I thought that was
cleaver in the neck.
Yeah, in the
neck. That was pretty wild. But that was a really, really cool like nod to the series. And that's just like a testament to Neil Druckmann, basically being a writer and a showrunner for this show. Like it's so cool that they can, and I know they have like Marlene. The voice actor that played Marlene in this series as well. And I think there's the voice actor that plays Ellie also is involved in this somehow.
I believe so. Well, I think she's the voice actor, and I think she also does the mocapping for it too. But she's
she does.
What's her name? Is it Ashley Johnson?
Yeah, something like that.
But I believe she's going to be in next episode because she's playing Ellie's mom in a flashback. And so I think you got a tease of it. Like if you watch through the very end of the credits, how they do the next episode tease, you see a brief clip of it. And so she's playing Ellie's mom in a flashback. And I believe that'll be next episode.
See, I thought that she wasn't going to be in it at all. I thought I saw something about that, but maybe I could be completely wrong. Because there was a thing going out when the show started, and she was getting like a bunch of people saying like she should be Ellie, and she was like, guys, I have like an office job now. Like I don't do that anymore or something like that. So I don't know. I thought that she wasn't in it, but if she is, that's cool. Like that's really cool. They go back.
Well, that's right. Yeah,
giving the credit to the people who like started.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a minor, like a throwback role, so it wasn't like a full thing like what Troy Baker got, but she will be in it.
Yeah, pretty cool nod though. That's pretty awesome.
Absolutely.
So, anyways, final ratings. Robbie, what did you rate this episode?
Gosh, this is like. This show has been so good, and like every episode is a banger, and it's like, can you say every single episode is a 6 out of 6? There's maybe 1 or 2 that are like 5.5s, but like this episode is a 6. Like this entire series is a 6. Like I if I get nitpicky, I can get nitpicky. But I am enjoying this so much, and the writing is so good, and the tension is so well built that I can't give it anything but a 6 at this point. Like it's so damn good. It's so good.
Agreed. Zayne, what was your rating?
Yeah, I think I gotta just the impact and the power of the story on this one. I gotta say 6 out of 6. Like I am really bummed about the lack of the action that we didn't get, that whole fighting off the clicker scene and just different things like that. But from a storytelling standpoint, and for what this establishes as Ellie as a whole, like it's a 6 out of 6 because it's just like they hit the story that needed to be told, and it's a very impactful story. So I think that overpowers my want for the fighting.
Yeah. I think you nailed it, Robbie. Every single episode of this series, I've been saying it's a 6 out of 6, and then they go out the next episode, and I don't know. It's hard to say that they topped the previous episode, but like I look at these episodes and it's so hard to find things that I don't like about the episode. So how can I give it any less than a 6? It's like so stinking good. So I also give it a 6 out of 6. Infinity Snap for episode 8 of The Last of Us. This series is so good, and it's going to be. I would be shocked if it is not does not win our Stan Lee for 2023 best show of the year. Like I think it definitely will. It's just been an incredible show. Series finale is coming up this weekend already, which is wild to think about. So
it is the shortest episode of the season. I just read that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I mean, and they've been solid lengths. I feel like anywhere from 55 to
this isn't Disney with 20-minute episodes and 15 minutes of credits. Like it's an actual full length show.
It's a little shorter, and we still get some good resolution. I think I'm all right with that, but we'll see how it goes. If you guys have any thoughts on episode 8, When We Are in Need of The Last of Us, or on episode 2 of The Mandalorian, go ahead and hit us up on social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Twitch, YouTube, TikTok, theinfinitybros.com. You can email us at infinitybrospodcast@gmail.com. Robbie, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a blast, my brother.
I had a good time. You've never called me brother before. That was
my brother.
That was weird.
It's a moment. It's a moment.
Switching it up a little
someone
bit,
on TikTok, or no, it was YouTube, did say 3 triplets. I think last time that us 3 were
that
on.
was, yeah, it was me, you. I think it was me, you, and Mark.
Yeah, they were like triplets.
All
that's all they said.
Had beards.
They didn't say anything
triplets.
except for triplets. Okay.
Oh. Thank you.
Respect.
Thank you. Zane, thank you also for joining us.
Of course. Happy to be here. It's a good time, Always fun to hang out.
We get Zane, like I think we've gotten Zane like 4 or 5 episodes of this Last of Us reviews that we've been doing.
It's been a lot of fun.
It's like an Infinity Bros record. You might have like doubled the amount of episodes you're on in the past couple months.
Got him.
I've always been it's like I always say, if you do AM episodes, I'm going to be there pretty much every single time.
That's true.
But like you guys are like, oh, I have kids and I work a normal job.
I mean, I don't work a normal job, but
well, you're elite like me, so
yeah,
all elite.
And there's people like Robbie.
And thank you, Infinity Bros Universe, for making us a part of your podcasting experience. Wherever you're listening, however you're listening, we appreciate you. Well, guys, thank you so much. We'll talk to you later. Love you 3000.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the Infinity Bros podcast. You can find the Infinity Bros on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at the Infinity Bros. Feel free to send listener feedback via email at infinitybrospodcast@gmail.com.